What's up, YouTube, and welcome to Codename Scream. I am that horror guy, and in case you're just joining us, please make sure to go ahead, like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications for all things horror. And for those of you that have been along here for the ride, I want to welcome you to round 2 of SLASHETHON. These are the two contenders you guys have chosen through previous episodes in your votes through comments, emails, messages on Instagram and Twitter. So thank you all so much for your participation. You guys are what truly dictates how this thing goes. I'm going to give you guys the stats and who I feel should win, but it's ultimately up to you guys to advance that and announce our champion when this is all said and done. If you haven't noticed already by now, I would hope you did right off the bat. We've been alluding to this for a minute now. If you ever see the pink shirt, you know we mean business. You know that the content may not be seen suitable to some viewers. If that is something you are not on board with, no harm, no foul. We'll see you next time. If that's something you're in for, just know when you see the pink shirt, we're here to mean business. And why do we have to bust it out this week? Well, if you didn't see last week when we had our tiebreaker with Goat, he chose to advance John Wayne Gacy. So it will now be Leatherface against John Wayne Gacy for our round 2 contenders. So this episode's going to be disgustingly awesome. If you notice, we're doing things a little differently. I'm sitting here like I do when we break the points down. Well, we're not going to sit and discuss everything as we previously did. We've already discussed Leatherface a couple different times through previous episodes, as well as Gacy. And if you're just joining us, please make sure to go back and take a look at those videos and get up to speed. What we're going to do here is just kind of summarize a few things that we may have missed along the way and go right into the points and see why they deserve to advance in my eyes, and we'll just go from there. So let's start off things right off the bat. We're going right into the points. It's a little different for me too. I know it's a little weird. We're gonna get through this together, though. I promise. Right out of the bat, we're already gonna drop a point straight off of Leatherface. Leatherface, compared to Gacy, as far as a kill count is concerned, only has 31 on-screen kills, which by my 2-to-1 ratio that I have in place only puts him at 26 kills. John Wayne Gacy was tried for 33 murders and possibly up to 45. There hasn't been a confirmed on that, unfortunately, to date, and with him no longer being present, we may never know. But he's got 33 there. So right off the bat, sorry to you, Leatherface. Moving forward, with the most brutal of the kills from the two, I am going to remove one off of Gacy. And not taking away from anything he did there, what he did was absolutely atrocious and disgusting. But I will say the Leatherface kills, particularly in the remake, when he is dragging the body down the stairs and he's scratching his fingernails up against the wall, snaps them off, and then puts the meat hook through him, and then later on saws him in half. That's brutal, man. Also, when he was missing a leg and he threw some salt up in there and bandaged it up, the epitome of brutality was in that entire scene, and that is why I'm electing that point to stay with Leatherface. That is just, wow. That just takes a lot to stomach down, man. Moving on with the motive, I'm actually going to go ahead and remove a point off of Leatherface immediately. There was never really a clear driven motive. He was just more or less a pawn for his family, I always thought. And even some of you in the discussions we've had through the comments and emails and whatnot, we've all kind of sat around the thought that we saw him more of like a victim to his own family, kind of forced against his will, if you would. Not a clear driven motive versus, I feel with John Wayne Gacy, he had a very, very terrible upbringing with his father, who was very physically and mentally abusive in multiple different ways. And I just feel like that was the clear driven motive to make him enact the crimes that he did. So that's where we're going with that. Those are the three that always carry over, as I previously had stated. We're always going to have those three be the main that follow with every episode. Then we're going to go into the three that are episode specific to try and balance it out here, especially with you guys being in charge of who advances here. The matchups may not be fair when it's all said and done, but that's where the fun comes in, right? So moving in here, the survivor count. We know how I feel about survivors on here. So Leatherface, you are losing 1. But I am going to deduct 2 off of John Wayne Gacy. And yes, 2. I will retract when I did the breakdown with Gacy in episode 2 of this. When he faced off against Freddy, I had stated that he only had 1 survivor. Upon further research when going into this, he actually has 2, which I'm going to discuss just a brief moment here. So December 30th, 1977, he had abducted 19-year-old Robert Donnelly from a Chicago bus stop at gunpoint. Took him to his house where he then went ahead, raped, tortured, and repeatedly dunked his head into a bathtub until he passed out. Just, yeah. That's all you can really say. You don't really have words. If you remember when I covered this last time, I was pretty speechless through a lot of it. And again, as you go further into this research, it's just even more so. Donnelly was actually part of the people that testified against Gacy when he was in trial. And he even said that Gacy taunted him with a lot of different statements like, aren't we playing fun games tonight? Things that just really poking at him. And he also later testified during the trial that he was in such pain from everything that he had done to him, he had repeatedly begged him to kill him, which he then replied to him, I'm getting around to it. After several hours of not doing that whatsoever, he then drove Donnelly back to his workplace, released him, warning him if he complained to the police, they would never believe him. So that was survivor number 1. Survivor number 2 came in 1978 on March 21st. He took 26-year-old Jeffrey Rignall into his car, where he then chloroformed him, drove him out to his house, where he restrained him by his arms, in the house, and they were affixed against the ceiling, what he used to restrain him with. And he then repeatedly raped, tortured him, and used various instruments on him, lit candles, whips, and repeatedly would chloroform him through this process to put him unconscious. He then took his body out to Lincoln Park in Chicago, where he dumped him unconscious, but he was still alive. When he came to it, he was able to stagger his way out to his girlfriend's apartment. Police were informed of the assault, but did not investigate any further. If you've noticed, we've kind of covered where the justice system seems to fail in a lot of these scenarios, and this is another one of those cases where, why wouldn't you investigate this? This is just absolutely absurd. Did this guy have situations where he cried wolf previously? Who cares? And the fact of the matter is, he's got proof here, man. Come on. But he did end up, they ended up obtaining a arrest warrant later on against him, because some friends of Rignall's actually followed his storyline, tracked down Gacy to his house. They got the arrest warrant out. Gacy was arrested July 15th, and then he faced battery charges. They're both going to lose a point in this next scenario here. And why is that exactly? Both, in a way, their cover-ups for their crimes were just, for lack of better words, sloppy. And it's bad. We shouldn't be sitting here and critiquing, oh, hey, you could have done that a lot better, man. But fact of the matter is, they were both really sloppy in their sense. When the police came to and actually investigate Gacy's house, he had attempted to unplug his sump pump and flood the crawl space where he had 26 different bodies, as we previously discussed. And all they had to do was plug it back in, and when they did is when they serviced some of the bodies, which is absolutely disgusting. They were already sped up on the decomposition process because he was using lime away, and with the flooding and whatnot, he was doing his part to try and do it. But at the end of the day, it was still sloppy. They were still there. They were still able to be uncovered. Yes, they weren't able to ID a lot of the victims, unfortunately. But fact of the matter is, kind of sloppy. Whereas Leatherface, his whole family was sloppy from the first film alone. There's a scene with the cook in particular where he starts beating the hitchhiker in front of his truck and stating, he's like, I told you to stay away from that graveyard and all this, because he was messing around and left a couple of them up for show. And that's in the opening scene of the 1974 original. By the second film, they were a little bit better with their cover-up, if you would, with, you know, it's all in the meat with the chili cook-offs and whatnot. It's disgusting, I know, but I warned you. But yeah, it's just still sloppy at the end of the day. And throughout the history of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre films, they almost always get caught to some degree. When we got into the remake side of things, and even when they did the prequel Leatherface in 2017, not to be confused with Leatherface Part 3, which was a phenomenal film, but the whole opening scene in that, and even in the film before that with Texas Chainsaw 3D, they show the families getting caught. And it was very reminiscent of Rob Zombie's Devil's Rejects with the Texas Chainsaw 3D, I thought. I'll get into that later on, obviously. Final points that I'm taking away. I'm unfortunately going to take one more away from Gacy. And the reason we're doing that here, when I was deciding how I was going to break down the show specifics, I had to think a little outside the box than I've had to previously. And with this, they both had a memorable closing sequence, if you would, even. Gacy, when he was being put to death by lethal injection, his final words were, "Kiss my ass." And Leatherface has been known in the original, and one of the most iconic scenes is him dancing and spinning the chainsaw around, closing out the film. Absolutely epic closing to a film ever. But when I thought about it, I was like, well, there you go. There's something. I'm going to go with that. That's terrifying. Like, he's still around and he's still swinging. And we got him for another 7 films in some form and iteration after that. Nothing against Kiss My Ass. That's, you know, pretty tongue-in-cheek. Anyway, so with that being said, I have them now sitting at a 2-1. I feel Leatherface would now be able to advance from here. And they're similar in ways. I still will say, by all means, Gacy is one of the most disgusting things I've ever had to research in my entire life. Kemper being number 2. So I'm not taking away from what was done there and the just morbidity that went into this. But moving forward, I'm going to have to go with Leatherface when it's all said and done. The fan side of me wants to see it. And also, I'm really curious to see where you guys want to take this. Which, now that you have seen how I'm breaking this down, it's up to you guys. I feel that this is how it should go, but ultimately it's up to you guys. So we're going to go ahead and need you to go ahead and do as you have done to this point. For those of you that are just joining us and not sure what we're doing, please make sure to either comment your vote with the hashtag #ScreamLeatherface or hashtag #ScreamGacy. Choose who you'd like to do there. You can also email me, message me on Instagram, and message me on Twitter the same way. Hashtag #ScreamLeatherface, hashtag #ScreamGacy. Whomever you choose here will be going into the final rounds, into the final 4, if you would, of the Slashethon. So they'll be sitting there for a moment waiting for everyone else to catch up. Which one I want to explain a little bit further. So this week was a little bit different. There was a little bit of excitement involved. Also, there's still a recount going on. But we have 3 more matchups in our first round, if you would. So we have got Ghostface and the Gainesville Ripper next Tuesday for Slashathon. And then we have 2 more first rounds to conclude that entire bracket. I'm going to have a visualizer here for you guys here shortly so it all makes sense. Like I said, it may just make sense to me when this is all said and done. But as it stands, Jason and Kemper, whoever you advance there, will face off against whoever you advance from Ghostface and Gainesville Ripper. And then the last 2, same thing. And eventually they'll catch up here to whomever you advance for Leatherface and Gacy. So we got a lot going on here, guys. But once we run this thing out, we will have our clear winner. Whomever is the winner of all of Slashathon for 2021, I will do an episode dedicated to strictly them. So if you guys have someone out of everyone that we covered that you really just want me to just deep dive, and we will no holds barred. If we have to bust out the pink shirt, we will. There's your little surprise that I've decided to throw in there. So if you guys really want one person to be covered, there you go. So Make sure to check in with that being said here on Thursday. Hope you guys enjoy that as well. And until next time, scare you later, YouTube.